Ethan Harper sat at his polished mahogany desk on the 27th floor of Harper's Grill corporate headquarters, the city skyline glinting through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The office was quiet, save for the faint hum of the air conditioner and the occasional ping of his laptop. At 34, Ethan was the youngest CEO in the company's history, having inherited the 6-location burger chain from his father 3 years ago. Harper's Grill was a legacy built on quality food and happy employees, a mantra his father, James Harper, had drilled into him since he was old enough to flip a patty. But today, as Ethan scrolled through his phone, that legacy felt like it was slipping through his fingers. A notification popped up, and his stomach churned. A viral post on X, retweeted thousands of times, showed a grainy video from the Eastwood location of Harper's Grill. A customer, visibly frustrated, waved a half-assembled burger at the camera missing lettuce, tomato, and sauce, while a cashier snapped back, "That's how it comes, sir." The caption read, "Another disaster at Harper's Grill. 20-minute wait for this? Never again." Comments piled up, each one a dagger. "Used to love this place. What happened?" "Rude staff, cold food, total mess." Ethan's jaw tightened. This wasn't just a bad day. This was a public humiliation. He leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his dark hair. For the past 2 years, he'd relied on reports from regional managers and corporate advisors to keep tabs on the chain's operations. The numbers looked solid, revenue was up, and the expansion to 6 locations had been a triumph. But the complaints had been creeping in. Long wait times, inconsistent food quality, high employee turnover. The reports always downplayed these issues, blaming temporary staffing shortages or supply chain hiccups. Ethan had trusted his team to handle it. Clearly, he trusted too much. His phone buzzed again. Another X post, this one a scathing review from an employee claiming they hadn't been paid on time in months. Harper's Grill treats its workers like garbage. No wonder the service sucks. Ethan's chest tightened. His father's voice echoed in his mind. Take care of your people, and they'll take care of your customers. He'd failed to uphold that promise. Ethan stood and paced the office, his polished shoes clicking against the hardwood floor. He couldn't keep sitting here, sifting through filtered reports while his company's reputation burned. He needed to see the truth for himself, not through spreadsheets, but with his own eyes. An idea sparked, bold and risky. He'd go undercover. No one at the Eastwood store had ever met him in person. Corporate visits were rare, and his face wasn't plastered across company memos. He could blend in, pose as a new hire, and uncover what was really going on. He grabbed his phone and dialed Lisa Carter, his assistant and one of the few people he trusted implicitly. She picked up on the second ring. "Ethan, everything okay?" "It's late. I'm going into the field," he said, his voice steady but urgent. "Eastwood store. I need you to set me up as a new trainee starting tomorrow. No one can know it's me." There was a long pause. "You're kidding, right? You're the CEO. You don't just play fry cook." "I'm not kidding, Lisa. The company's bleeding, and I can't fix it from this office. I need to see what's happening on the ground." Lisa sighed. "This is insane. What if someone recognizes you? What if it backfires?" "They won't," Ethan said. "I'll make sure of it. Just get me in as Jake Miller, new hire, no experience." "Can you do that?" Another pause, then a reluctant, "Fine. I'll handle the paperwork. But if this blows up, don't blame me." Ethan hung up, adrenaline coursing through him. He crossed the office to a mirror near the coat rack and studied his reflection. Clean cut, dark hair, sharp jawline. Too recognizable for someone who'd been featured in a local business magazine last month. It needed disguise, nothing dramatic, just enough to throw off any suspicion. Gray hair dye, maybe a pair of glasses, and some stubble. He could pull it off. The next morning, Ethan stood in his bathroom, staring at a stranger in the mirror. His hair was now a convincing shade of silver gray, courtesy of a temporary dye kit. He'd swapped his tailored suit for a faded flannel shirt and jeans, and a pair of wire-rimmed glasses perched on his nose. A light layer of stubble carefully applied with makeup to look natural completed the transformation. He was no longer Ethan Harper, CEO. He was Jake Miller, a down-on-his-luck guy looking for a fresh start at Harper's Grill. As he drove to the Eastwood store, his mind raced with questions. Was the problem just one bad manager? A few disgruntled employees? Or was it deeper, a rot that had spread through the entire chain? He pulled into the parking lot, the familiar Harper's Grill logo, a smiling burger with a crown looming over the building. The lot was littered with stray napkins, and a faded "Now Hiring" sign hung crookedly on the door. His gut twisted. This wasn't the welcoming, bustling restaurant he remembered from his father's days. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of sizzling grease and something faintly burnt. The dining area was half empty, but the few customers present looked impatient, tapping their feet or checking their phones. Behind the counter, employees moved in a chaotic blur, their faces drawn and tired. Ethan's heart sank. This wasn't just a rough shift. Something was deeply wrong. A wiry man in his late 30s approached, his name tag reading Ryan Trainer. His scowl was permanent, etched into his face like a warning sign. "You Jake?" he asked, barely glancing up from a clipboard. "Yeah," Ethan said, keeping his voice neutral. "New guy." Ryan snorted, tossing a greasy spatula onto the counter. "Great, another rookie. Look, this ain't brain surgery. Flip burgers, don't burn 'em, and stay out of my way. Got it?" Ethan nodded, his jaw tightening. He'd expected some resistance, but Ryan's attitude was already grating. Before he could respond, a young woman stepped up beside him, her name tag reading Sarah. She was in her mid-20s, with dark circles under her eyes and a nervous energy that made her shift from foot to foot. Ryan, can you show me how to work the register again?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan rolled his eyes. "Oh, fantastic. A slow one. Sarah, if you can't handle a few buttons, maybe fast food ain't for you." Sarah's face fell, and Ethan's fists clenched at his sides. He forced himself to stay calm. He was here to observe, not to intervene, not yet. But as Ryan continued to bark orders and Sarah struggled to keep up, Ethan knew this was just the beginning. The store was a pressure cooker, and he was about to uncover exactly how bad things had gotten. He followed Ryan to the grill, his eyes scanning the kitchen. Grease coated the counters, the fryer oil looked days past due for a change, and a soda. Machine in the corner sputtered like it was on its last legs. Two employees near the drive-thru whispered to each other, their voices low but audible. "Payroll's late again," one muttered. I heard corporate's cracking down, but nothing ever changes. Ethan's stomach twisted. Late payroll? That was unacceptable. He'd personally ensured funds were allocated properly, so where was the breakdown? He glanced at Sarah, who was fumbling with the register, her hands trembling under Ryan's glare. This wasn't just about one bad trainer or a single bad day. This was systemic, and Ethan was determined to dig to the root of it. As the morning rush began to build, Ethan took his place at the grill, the heat prickling his skin. He wasn't just Jake Miller, the new trainee. He was Ethan Harper, and he was here to take back control of his company one burger at a time. The kitchen at Harper's Grill Eastwood location was a battlefield, and Ethan Harper, disguised as Jake Miller, the new trainee, stood in the thick of it. The air was heavy with the acrid tang of overused fryer oil, and the relentless beeping of timers created a chaotic rhythm that matched the pounding in Ethan's chest. He gripped the spatula Ryan Carter, his trainer, had tossed him, its handle slick with grease. The morning rush was in full swing, and the counter was a blur of orders piling up on the screen. Employees darted between stations, their movements frantic but inefficient, like soldiers under fire with no clear strategy. Ryan, a wiry man in his late 30s with a permanent scowl, loomed over the grill, barking orders with the precision of a drill sergeant. "Move it, rookie," he snapped at Ethan, not bothering to look up. "Those patties aren't gonna flip themselves." Ethan nodded, keeping his expression neutral, but his eyes were everywhere, taking in the cracked tiles underfoot, the flickering light above the prep station, and the soda machine that sputtered with every pour. This wasn't the Harper's grill his father had built. This was a machine breaking down, piece by piece. Beside him, Sarah Bennett, the nervous trainee he'd met earlier, struggled to keep up. Her hands trembled as she tried to assemble a burger, her eyes darting toward Ryan as if expecting another verbal lashing. She was in her mid-20s, with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and unrelenting stress. Ethan had overheard her earlier, asking Ryan for help with the register, only to be met with a cutting. "If you can't handle a few buttons, maybe fast food ain't for you." The memory made Ethan's jaw tighten. He wanted to step in to tell Ryan to back off, but he was Jake Miller now, not Ethan Harper, CEO. He needed to see how deep this rot went as Ethan flipped a row of patties. The sizzle of grease filling the air, a new voice cut through the chaos. "Hey, what's taking so long?" A customer, a burly man in a construction vest, leaned over the counter, his face red with impatience. "I've been waiting 15 minutes for a damn burger." Sarah froze, a bun slipping from her grasp and hitting the floor with a soft thud. Her eyes widened, and she glanced at Ryan, who let out an exaggerated groan. "Unbelievable," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Sarah, you're killing us." "That's waste, and it's coming out of your paycheck." Sarah's face went pale, her voice barely a whisper. "What? I didn't mean. Accidents happen," Ethan cut in, his tone calm but firm. He stepped closer to Sarah, placing himself between her and Ryan's glare. "It's her first week, right? Ease." "Oh." Ryan turned, his eyes narrowing. "Oh, we got a hero here." "What? You think you're gonna save the day, rookie? Focus on your own mess before you start playing night." He gestured at the grill, where one of Ethan's patties was starting to char. Ethan flipped it quickly, keeping his face impassive. But inside, his blood was boiling. Ryan wasn't just impatient. He took pleasure in tearing people down. The customer at the counter wasn't done. "This place is a joke," he shouted, drawing the attention of other diners. "I want my money back." Sarah's hand shook as she fumbled with the refund button on the register, and Ryan muttered under his breath, just loud enough for Ethan and Sarah to hear, "Useless." She'd be gone in a week, like the rest. Ethan bit back a response. He needed to stay undercover, to gather more evidence before acting. But every snide comment from Ryan was another crack in his resolve. He glanced at Sarah, who was trying to focus on the register, her shoulders hunched as if bracing for the next blow. Ethan wanted to tell her she wasn't the problem, that this wasn't how Harper's grill was supposed to be. Instead, he turned back to the grill, his mind racing as the rush intensified. Ethan noticed more signs of dysfunction. The fryer oil, dark and murky, gave off a burnt smell that clung to the air. A delivery of frozen patties arrived. Packaging was torn, frost clinging to the edges like a warning of poor handling. Two employees, Jason and Emma, struggled to unload the heavy boxes, muttering about how shipments were always late or damaged. "We tell management," Jason said, wiping sweat from his brow, but nothing changes. "They just say, make do." Ethan's stomach twisted. Food safety was non-negotiable, yet here it was, being ignored. He moved to help Jason with the boxes, gripping one side to ease the load. "This happen a lot?" he asked, keeping his tone casual. Jason, a lanky kid barely out of high school, nodded. "Yeah, all the time. Half the stuff comes thawed or busted. We report it, but the manager just shrugs. Says corporate's too slow to fix anything." Ethan's grip tightened on the box. He'd always ensured funds were allocated for quality control, so where was the breakdown? His eyes flicked to the back office, where Michael Thompson, the store manager, had briefly appeared earlier, clipboard in hand, before vanishing again. Michael's absence was as telling as Ryan's presence. Neither was leading, but in different ways. As the rush died down, Ethan seized a moment to check on Sarah. She'd stepped away from the register to catch her breath, her hands still trembling. He approached, keeping his voice low. "You okay?" She forced a nod, but her eyes were glassy. "It's just Ryan's like this every shift. I need this job, so I keep my head down." She glanced toward the kitchen, ensuring Ryan wasn't listening. "I've got a kid at home, you know? I can't afford to mess this up." Ethan's heart sank. Sarah wasn't just a struggling trainee. She was a single mother fighting to survive. Her vulnerability made Ryan's cruelty even harder to stomach. "How long's he been like this?" Ethan asked. "Months," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "People report him, but Michael ignores it. Says it's just how Ryan is. Like, that makes it okay." Before Ethan could respond, a commotion erupted at the counter. A woman in a business suit waved a tray, her voice sharp. "This burger's raw," she said, peeling back the bun to reveal a patty that was pink in the center. "I could get sick from this. Where's the manager?" Michael finally emerged from the back, his expression bored. "Ma'am, we're doing our best," he said, barely glancing at the burger. "We'll make another one." "Your best?" the woman snapped. "This is unacceptable. I want to speak to someone who actually cares." Ryan, standing nearby, muttered, "Maybe if people weren't so picky." Ethan caught the words, and so did Sarah, whose shoulders tensed again. Michael didn't react, just waved a hand. "We'll fix it. Next order up." Ethan's fists clenched. This wasn't just mismanagement, it was neglect. A raw burger wasn't a minor mistake, it was a health risk. He overheard Jason and Emma whispering near the drive-thru. "Payroll's late again," Emma said, her voice low. "I heard corporate's cracking down, but it's the same old story." "Cracking down?" Jason snorted. "They don't care. We're just cogs in the machine." Ethan's stomach churned. Late payroll, unsafe food, broken equipment. This was a culture of apathy, and it was rotting his company from the inside out. He glanced at Ryan, who's now leaning against the prep station, smirking as he watched Sarah struggle to refill the sauce dispensers. "Still here?" Ryan said, his voice dripping with mockery. "Thought you'd have quit by now." "She's learning," Ethan said, his tone even but firm. "Pretty fast, too." Ryan gave him a sideways glance, unimpressed. "Yeah, sure. Until she melts down again." He chuckled, a sound that sent a fresh wave of anger through Ethan. Ryan wasn't just impatient. He thrived on making others feel small. And worse, he acted untouchable, as if no one could challenge him. Ethan's mind raced. He'd come here, expecting inefficiencies, maybe low morale. But this was systemic, a toxic mix of bullying, neglect, and operational failures. He needed to see the full scope before acting, but every moment in this kitchen pushed him closer to breaking character. As Sarah returned to the register, her movements hesitant but determined, Ethan made a silent promise. He wasn't just here to observe anymore. He was here to fix this, for Sarah, for the team, and for the legacy his father had entrusted to him. The lunch rush at Harper's Grill Eastwood location hit like a tidal wave, transforming the already chaotic kitchen into a pressure cooker. Ethan Harper, still disguised as Jake Miller, worked the grill, the heat searing his skin as grease popped. and sizzled. The air was thick with the burnt scent of overused fryer oil, and the constant beeping of timers blended with shouted orders, creating a relentless cacophony. Ethan's eyes darted between the sizzling patties and the counter, where orders piled up on the screen faster than the understaffed team could handle. Every station was a mess, grease-smeared counters, crumpled wrappers littering the floor, and a soda machine that sputtered like it was gasping for air. Sarah Bennett, the young single mother Ethan had grown protective of, stood at the assembly station, her movements jerky as she tried to keep up. Her dark hair clung to her sweat-dampened forehead, and her hands trembled as she layered toppings on a burger. Ryan Carter, the bullying trainer, hovered nearby, his scowl sharper than ever. "Hurry up, Sarah," he snapped, tossing a bun onto her station. "You're slowing the whole line down. Again." Sarah flinched, her voice barely audible. "I'm trying, Ryan. It's just, trying's not enough." He cut her off, loud enough for the entire kitchen to hear. "If you can't hack it, maybe you shouldn't be here." A few customers at the counter glanced up, sensing the tension. Ethan gripped his spatula tighter, his knuckles whitening. He wanted to shut Ryan down, but he forced himself to stay in character. Jake Miller didn't have the authority to act yet, but Ethan Harper was cataloging every detail, and the list of failures was growing. The chaos escalated when a new delivery arrived at the back door. Ethan overheard Jason, the young employee from earlier, muttering to Emma, a veteran worker in her late 20s, as they struggled to unload a crate of frozen patties. "Another busted shipment," Jason said, prying open a torn box. Frost clung to the edges, and several patties were partially thawed, their packaging slick with condensation. "This is the third time this week. We told Michael, but he just says deal with it." Ethan's stomach churned. Thawed meat wasn't just a quality issue, it was a health hazard. He moved closer, helping Jason lift the crate. "They always come like this?" he asked, keeping his tone casual. Emma nodded, wiping her hands on her apron. "Yeah, suppliers cutting corners, or maybe it's the delivery guy. We report it, but Michael doesn't care, and corporate never responds, so we just make do." Ethan's jaw tightened. He'd implemented strict supply chain protocols when he took over as CEO. If those were being ignored, someone higher up was dropping the ball. His eyes flicked to the back office, where Michael Thompson, the store manager, had last been seen, skimming a clipboard with the urgency of someone checking a grocery list. Michael's absence during the rush was glaring, but his brief appearances were even more telling. He didn't notice, or didn't care, about the chaos unfolding under his watch. As Ethan returned to the grill, a shout from the counter snapped his attention. A woman in a bright red jacket waved a tray, her voice cutting through the din. "This is ridiculous," she said, holding up a burger. "I ordered no onions, and this is practically an onion salad. And it's cold. Where's the manager?" Sarah froze, her hands hovering over the assembly station. Ryan rolled his eyes, muttering, "Here we go again." Before Sarah could respond, the woman slammed the tray down, drawing every eye in the dining area. "I've been waiting 20 minutes, and this is what I get? I want to speak to someone in charge now." Michael finally emerged from the back, his expression a mix of boredom and irritation. He adjusted his name tag and approached the counter, his voice flat. "Ma'am, we're doing our best. We'll remake it." "Your best?" the woman snapped, her face flushed. "This isn't even edible. And it's not just me. Look around. Everyone's waiting forever, and half the orders are wrong." Ethan glanced at the dining area. She was right. Customers were shifting impatiently, some checking their watches, others muttering to each other. A man at a nearby table pushed his tray away, shaking his head at a soggy pile of fries. Ethan's heart sank. This wasn't just one bad burger, it was a pattern. He caught Sarah's eye, her face pale with embarrassment, and gave her a subtle nod, trying to reassure her. But Ryan seized the moment to pile on. "Sarah, you messed up the order again," he said, loud enough for the customer to hear. "Maybe. If you paid attention, we wouldn't have to deal with this." Sarah's shoulders slumped, her voice barely a whisper. I thought I got it right." Ethan stepped forward, unable to stay silent. "It's a busy rush," he said, keeping his tone even. "Mistakes happen. Maybe we could use better training to avoid this." Ryan turned on him, his lip curling. "Oh, look at you, rookie. Got all the answers, huh? Stick to flipping burgers and let me handle the real work." Ethan held his gaze, his pulse racing. He was seconds away from breaking character, but a new crisis pulled his attention. A loud pop came from the fryer, followed by a plume of smoke. Jason cursed, rushing to unplug the machine as the acrid smell intensified. "This thing's been acting up all week," he said, coughing. "I told Michael it needs replacing, but he said it's not in the budget." Customers were now staring, some pulling out their phones to record the chaos. Ethan's mind raced. A faulty fryer wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a fire hazard. He glanced at Michael, who had retreated to the counter to placate the angry customer with a free meal voucher. "We'll take care of it, ma'am," Michael said, his tone robotic. He didn't even glance at the smoking fryer. Ethan's frustration boiled over, but he forced himself to stay focused. He needed to understand the full scope of the dysfunction before acting. He turned to Sarah, who was now cleaning up the spilled bun from earlier, her movements mechanical. "You holding up?" he asked quietly. She hesitated, then exhaled shakily. "Barely. Ryan's always like this, and Michael doesn't care. I can't lose this job, Jake. My daughter's only 4, and I'm all she's got." Ethan's chest tightened. Sarah's vulnerability hit him hard, reminding him of his father's stories about employees who were like family, not just names on a payroll. He wanted to tell her everything would be okay, that he'd fix this, but he couldn't not yet. "You're doing better than you think," he said instead. "Keep going." Sarah managed a small nod, but her eyes were still glassy. Ethan turned back to the grill, his mind racing. The fryer incident, the botched orders, the damaged shipments, it was all connected. And Michael's apathy was the glue holding this mess together. Ethan overheard Emma and Jason near the drive-thru, their voices low but urgent. "Payroll's late again," Emma said, her tone bitter. "I can't keep covering shifts with no overtime. I heard corporate's supposed to fix it, but it's been months." Jason snorted. "Corporate? They don't even know we exist. Michael says he sends reports, but nothing happens." Ethan's stomach twisted. He'd personally signed off on payroll budgets, ensuring funds were available. If payments were late, someone was mishandling funds or worse. He glanced at Michael, who was now back in his office, door half closed, scrolling through his phone. The man wasn't just a bad manager, he was a roadblock, letting problems fester while employees like Sarah paid the price thought as the rush began to slow. Ethan caught another troubling detail. A customer returned a tray, pointing at a burger that was visibly undercooked, the center pink and glistening. "This is raw," the man said, his voice calm but firm. "I'm not eating this." Ryan, standing nearby, muttered, "People are so damn picky." Sarah, tasked with remaking the order, looked like she might cry. Ethan stepped closer, keeping his voice low. "You got this, Sarah. It's not your fault." She nodded, but her hand shook as she reassembled the burger. Ethan's gaze shifted to Ryan, who was now joking with another employee, completely unfazed by the customer's complaint. The man's casual cruelty was infuriating, but it was Michael's absence that stung more. A manager should be out here, fixing problems, not hiding in an office. Ethan's resolve hardened. This wasn't just about Ryan's bullying or Sarah's struggles. It was about a system that had failed at every level: equipment, supplies, payroll, leadership. He'd come to Eastwood expecting inefficiencies, but what he'd found was neglect. A culture that crushed employees and alienated customers. As the lunch rush wound down, Ethan wiped his hands on his apron, his mind made up. He couldn't stay silent much longer. The next shift would be his last as Jake Miller, and then Ethan Harper would take control. The lunch rush at Harper's Grill Eastwood location had left the kitchen in shambles, a battlefield littered with grease-stained wrappers and the faint smell of burnt oil lingering in the air. Ethan Harper, still disguised as Jake Miller, stood at the grill, his hands steady despite the storm brewing inside him. The afternoon had dragged on with more evidence of dysfunction. Undercooked burgers, a malfunctioning fryer, and a delivery of damaged supplies. But it was the human toll that hit Ethan hardest. Sarah Bennett's trembling hands as she endured Ryan Carter's relentless bullying, and Michael Thompson's absence, his apathy a silent endorsement of the chaos. Ethan had seen enough. The time for observation was overdone as the rush tapered off. The dining area grew quieter, but the tension in the kitchen was palpable. Sarah was at the prep station, refilling sauce dispensers with mechanical precision, her shoulders hunched as if bracing for another jab from Ryan. The trainer leaned against the counter, his smirk as sharp as ever, tossing out a low, mocking comment. "Still here, Sarah. Figured you'd have bailed by now." "Most do." Ethan's fists clenched, the spatula in his hand feeling like a weapon he couldn't yet wield. He kept his voice even, his disguise still intact. "She's doing fine, Ryan. Better than fine. Maybe give her a break." Ryan turned, his eyes narrowing. "Oh, Jake, always the hero. You think you're gonna fix her? Good luck. She's a lost cause." He chuckled, a sound that grated against Ethan's nerves like sandpaper. Sarah's face flushed, and she looked away, her hands faltering on the sauce bottle. Before Ethan could respond, a new crisis erupted at the counter. A man in a flannel shirt, his face red with frustration, waved a tray in the air. "This is the second time my order's wrong," he shouted, drawing every eye in the dining area. "No pickles. I said no pickles. And this thing's swimming in them, and it's cold. Where's the manager?" Michael finally emerged from his office, his clipboard dangling at his side like an afterthought. His bored expression barely shifted as he approached the counter. "Sir, we'll remake it," he said, his voice flat, devoid of urgency. "It's a busy day." "Busy?" the man snapped, shoving the tray forward. "I've been waiting 25 minutes. Your staff's a mess, and this place is falling apart. Do you even care?" Ethan's pulse quickened. The customer's words echoed his own thoughts, and the weight of his father's legacy pressed harder on his shoulders. He glanced at Sarah, who was now trying to remake the order, her movements frantic under the pressure of the customer's glare and Ryan's hovering presence. Ryan, predictably, seized the opportunity to pile on. "Sarah, you screwed up again," he said, loud enough for the customer to hear. "Can't you get one thing right?" Sarah's eyes glistened, and she bit her lip, fighting back tears. That was it. Ethan had reached his limit. The kitchen, the broken equipment, the late payroll, Ryan's cruelty, Michael's neglect, it wasn't just a bad shift. It was a betrayal of everything Harper's Grill stood for. He set his spatula down, the metal clinking against the grill, and took a deep breath. The room seemed to slow, the beeping timers and murmured complaints fading into the background. He stepped into the break room, where the staff was scattered, some scrolling through their phones, others rubbing tired eyes. Sarah sat at the far end, her head bowed, staring at the floor. Ryan leaned against the vending machine, smirking as he sipped a soda. Michael stood by the doorway, skimming his clipboard with the same disinterest he'd shown all day. Ethan's heart pounded, but his voice was clear and steady. "I think it's time I introduce myself properly." Heads turned, Ryan raised an eyebrow, his smirk faltering. What's that supposed to mean? Ethan reached up, pulling off the wire-rimmed glasses and running a hand through his silver-dyed hair, shaking loose the temporary color to reveal the dark strands beneath. The room went silent, the air thick with shock. Michael's clipboard slipped slightly in his hands, his eyes widening. Sarah's mouth parted, her breath catching. "I'm Ethan Harper," he said, his voice cutting through the stillness. "CEO of Harper's Grill." A sharp gasp escaped Sarah. Ryan's soda froze halfway to his lips, his usual smugness replaced by a flicker of panic. Michael's face drained of color, his clipboard now clutched like a lifeline. The other employees, Jason, Emma, and a few others exchanged stunned glances, their phones forgotten. Ethan let the silence hang, letting the weight of his words settle. "I came here today because I needed to see what was happening in my stores." Ethan continued, his gaze sweeping the room. Not reports, not numbers, the reality. "And what I saw was worse than I imagined." He turned to Ryan, whose hands twitched at his sides, his earlier confidence evaporating. "I saw how you treat your coworkers, Ryan. How you make them feel small, how you push them until they break or quit. You've created a toxic environment, and it stops now." Ryan opened his mouth, his voice shaky. "Look, you're done here," Ethan said, his tone firm, unyielding. "Pack your things and leave." Ryan's face twisted, a mix of anger and disbelief. He looked to Michael for support, but the manager was frozen, his eyes fixed on the floor. Ryan's shoulders slumped, and he turned sharply, storming out of the break room without another word. The door slammed behind him, the sound echoing like a gavel. Ethan shifted his gaze to Michael, who was now visibly sweating. "And you," Ethan said, stepping closer. "I trusted you to run this store. You failed. You ignored complaints, let equipment fall apart, let payroll slip, and turned a blind eye to Ryan's behavior. You've let this store and these people down." Michael swallowed hard, his voice barely audible. "Sir, I followed protocol. We're short-staffed, and if you were following protocol," Ethan cut him off, "payroll wouldn't be late. Food wouldn't be arriving thawed and unsafe. Employees wouldn't be afraid to ask for help. You're on probation, Michael. I'm bringing in someone else to oversee this location until a full review is complete." Michael's face reddened, but he didn't argue. He adjusted his collar, his hands trembling, and nodded stiffly. "Yes, sir." Ethan turned to the employees, who were still processing the revelation. Sarah's eyes were wide, a mix of shock and relief. Jason and Emma stood straighter, as if bracing for what came next. "This isn't just about one store," Ethan said, his voice softening but resolute. "This is about every one of you. You deserve better than what you've been given. Better equipment, better schedules, better treatment. I'm here to make sure you get it." A murmur rippled through the room. Sarah let out a shaky breath, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Jason nodded slowly, as if daring to believe this was real. Emma crossed her arms, her expression cautious but hopeful. Ethan stepped towards Sarah, lowering his voice. "I saw how hard you worked today, Sarah, despite everything. The way you were treated was unacceptable, but you kept going. That takes strength. I want you to stay, and I'll make sure you have the support you need to succeed here." Sarah's eyes widened, and she managed a small, "Thank you, Mr. Harper." Her voice cracked, but there was a flicker of confidence in her gaze that hadn't been there before. Ethan turned back to the group. "Things are going to change, starting today. If you've got concerns, I want to hear them. No more being ignored. No more making do." For a moment, the break room was silent, the weight of Ethan's words sinking in. Then Jason spoke, his voice hesitant but clear. "The schedules, they're all over the place. We ask for days off, but Michael just ignores it. And we get stuck, covering shifts with no notice. Emma chimed in, her tone sharp. And the supplies. We're always running out of basics, buns, lettuce, you name it. Customers get mad, but we're told to figure it out. Ethan nodded, his jaw tight. That's on me. I thought the systems I put in place were working, but clearly, they're not. Payroll, schedules, supplies, it's all going to be fixed. And I'm starting right now. He stepped back, his mind already racing with next steps. He'd seen the reality of his company, and it was uglier than he'd feared. But standing in this break room, surrounded by employees who'd been pushed to their limits, Ethan felt a surge of determination. This was his father's legacy, and he'd fight to save it one store, one employee, one burger at a time. The break room at Harper's Grill Eastwood location was still buzzing with shock, the air thick with the aftershocks of Ethan Harper's revelation. The silver dye was gone from his hair, and the wire-rimmed glasses sat discarded on a table, leaving no trace of Jig Miller, the trainee. Ethan stood at the center of the room, his dark eyes scanning the employees. Sarah Bennett, still processing the moment with wide eyes. Jason leaning forward with cautious hope. Emma, arms crossed but attentive. And others, their tired faces lit with a flicker of possibility. Ryan Carter's abrupt exit had left a void, and Michael Thompson's pale, defeated expression as he retreated to his office signaled the end of an era of neglect. But Ethan knew this was just the beginning. Words weren't enough. He needed action, and he needed it now. He faced the group, his voice steady but warm. I meant what I said. Things are going to change, starting today. But I need to hear from you what's been ignored, what's been broken. No one's getting in trouble for speaking up. Not anymore. The employees exchanged glances, hesitant at first. Then Sarah spoke, her voice soft but gaining strength. The schedules, they're a mess. We ask for specific days off doctor's appointments, school, family stuff, but Michael just ignores it. Last week, I got scheduled for a night shift I didn't sign up for, and I had to scramble to find a sitter for my daughter. Ethan nodded, his jaw tight. That's unacceptable. What else? Jason cleared his throat, his lanky frame shifting. When someone calls out, we're expected to cover. No notice, no overtime. It's like we're supposed to live here. Emma chimed in, her tone sharp but measured. And the supplies. We're always out of basics, buns, lettuce, sauce packets. Customers get mad, but Michael just tells us to make do. It's impossible to keep people happy when we don't have what they ordered. Ethan's chest tightened. These weren't just complaints. They were symptoms of a system that had failed his people. He turned to the group. Anything else? A younger employee, barely out of high school, raised a hand tentatively. The equipment. The fryers, the grills, even the fridge, they're always breaking down. Last week, we had to unplug the fryer mid-shift just to keep it from smoking. We reported, but Michael says maintenance requests take too long. Ethan's gaze darkened. He'd approved budgets for equipment upgrades, so why were these issues piling up? Thank you, he said, his voice firm. Here's what's happening. First, payroll issues are being resolved immediately. No one waits for money they've earned. Second, schedules will be fixed, no more last-minute changes, no more forced shifts. You'll have a say in what works for you. Third, I'm approving. New equipment, today fryers, grills, everything. And I'll personally oversee the process to make sure it happens fast. The room stirred, a mix of disbelief and relief. Sarah's eyes widened, and Jason let out a low whistle. Emma uncrossed her arms, her skepticism softening. Ethan continued, his tone resolute. As for the culture here, it changes now. No one gets to treat their coworkers with disrespect. If you see it, report it. If it's ignored, you come to me. He turned to Sarah, his voice softening. Sarah, I saw how you kept going today, even with Ryan breathing down your neck. That's not just resilience. That's leadership. I want you to stay, and I want to make sure you have the support to grow here. We have a management training program at corporate. I'd like you to consider it. Sarah blinked, her breath catching. Me? I don't know what to say. Thank you, Mr. Harper. Just Ethan, he said with a small smile. And you're welcome. The break room door swung open, and a tall man in his 50s stepped in, his sharp eyes scanning the room. His name tag read David, Regional Manager. Ethan had called him an hour ago, demanding his presence at Eastwood immediately. David's composed demeanor contrasted sharply with Michael's apathy, and his arrival signaled the next phase of Ethan's plan. David, Ethan said, gesturing him forward. This is David Reynolds, your new interim manager. He's here to get this store back on track. Unlike Michael, he prioritizes his team. David nodded, his voice calm but authoritative. I've been briefed on the situation. We're going to fix this together. I'll be meeting with each of you to understand what's been going wrong and how we can make it right. Ethan caught a flicker of unease in David's expression, a hesitation that hinted at something deeper. As the employees dispersed, Ethan pulled David aside, lowering his voice. There's more to this than one bad store, isn't there? David exhaled, his eyes guarded. I've had concerns about the regional oversight for a while. Some reports, they don't always make it up the chain. I suspect someone higher up has been filtering them to keep things looking clean. Ethan's jaw tightened. A corporate cover-up? That would explain the late payroll, the ignored maintenance requests, the subpar supplies. Who? He asked. His voice low. David hesitated. I don't have proof yet, but I'll dig. Give me time. Do it fast, Ethan said. I want names. As David nodded and stepped away to inspect the kitchen, Ethan pulled out his phone and dialed Lisa, his assistant. She picked up on the first ring. Ethan, how's your undercover adventure going? It's over, he said, his tone clipped. I need approvals pushed through now, equipment replacements, maintenance, and a full audit of the supply chain. Payroll's been late here, Lisa. That's on us. There was a pause, then a sigh. That's a lot to process at once. Then process it quickly, Ethan said. The conditions here are unacceptable. Faulty equipment, delayed shipments, employees treated like garbage. None of this should be happening. I'll get the paperwork moving, Lisa said, resigned. Anything else? Get me a meeting with the board tomorrow, Ethan said. We're auditing every store, every manager, every process. This stops now. He hung up and stepped back onto the floor. The dinner rush was starting, and the strain on the team was already visible. Sarah was at the register, her movements more confident but still cautious. Jason and Emma hustled at the prep station, their faces weary but determined. Without Ryan's toxic presence or Michael's indifference, the mood was shifting, but the weight of years of neglect lingered. Ethan rolled up his sleeves and stepped behind the counter. The cashier, a quiet woman named Mia, gave him a hesitant glance. You don't have to do this, Mr. Harper. I do, Ethan said, grabbing a tray. Let's get through this rush. He worked alongside them, manning the grill, assembling orders, and keeping pace with the flow. The heat was intense, the orders relentless, but for the first time that day, there was a sense of unity. Employees exchanged quick nods, their movements more coordinated. Sarah caught his eye and offered a small smile, a sign she was starting to believe things could change. Half an hour later, David approached, his sharp eyes taking in the kitchen state. I've got a list of priorities, he said, handing Ethan a notepad. New fryers, grill repairs, and a complete restock of supplies. I'll have a crew here tomorrow to start. Good, Ethan said, scanning the list. And the staff? Meeting with them individually tonight, David said. We'll rework the schedules, get their input, and I'll make sure payroll's processed by end of day. Ethan nodded, but his mind was already on the bigger picture. David's hint about a corporate cover-up gnawed at him. Someone was hiding the truth, and he wouldn't rest until he found out who. He caught Sarah organizing the prep station, her movements steadier than before. You're doing great, he said, pausing beside her. She glanced up, a mix of surprise and gratitude in her eyes. I didn't think you'd actually do all this. Does this mean things will really change? Ethan met her gaze, his voice firm. It means they already are. As the dinner rush continued, Ethan felt a spark of hope. The Eastwood store was the first step, but it wouldn't be the last. He'd uncovered a rot that ran deeper than he'd imagined, and he was ready to cut it out, no matter how high it went. The dinner rush at Harper's Grill Eastwood location had settled into a steady rhythm, the kitchen humming with a newfound energy. Ethan Harper stood at the counter, his sleeves still rolled up from helping assemble orders. The air was less oppressive now, the burnt smell of old fryer oil fading as David Reynolds, the new interim manager, directed a crew to clean the equipment. The staff moved with cautious optimism. Sarah Bennett's hands were steadier at the register. Jason's quick nods to Emma showed a spark of teamwork, and even the quieter employees, like Mia, seemed less tense without Ryan Carter's looming presence. Michael Thompson was gone for the day, on administrative leave pending a full review, and the absence of his apathy was like a weight lifted from the store. Ethan caught Sarah's eye as she handed a customer a perfectly assembled burger. Her small smile, a stark contrast to the trembling trainee he'd met that morning. The dining area was calmer now, with fewer complaints and faster service, but Ethan knew this was just a start. The cracked tiles, the sputtering soda machine, the late payroll, these were symptoms of a deeper rot, one that stretched beyond Eastwood. As he wiped his hands on his apron, his phone buzzed in his pocket. A message from Lisa, his assistant. Another ex-post just dropped. Complaints about the Westfield location. Same issues, slow service, rude staff. You sure you want to keep playing? Detective? Ethan's jaw tightened. The Westfield store was the chain's flagship, the one his father had opened first. If it was failing too, the problem wasn't just one bad manager or toxic trainer. It was systemic, and someone at corporate was letting it happen. David's earlier hint about a potential cover-up gnawed at him. He typed a quick reply to Lisa. Set up a meeting with the regional directors tomorrow, and get me into Westfield as a trainee. Same deal as today. He slipped the phone back into his pocket, his resolve hardening. Eastwood was a battle won, but the war for his father's legacy was far from over. He stepped over to Sarah, who was organizing the prep station with a newfound confidence. You're doing great, he said, his voice warm but firm. This place is already feeling different. Sarah glanced up, her eyes bright with a mix of gratitude and disbelief. I didn't think you'd actually change things so fast. Does this mean it's really going to be better? Ethan met her gaze, his voice steady. It means it's already happening, but I'm not done. Not here, not anywhere. David approached, his notepad filled with scribbled priorities. Equipment orders are in, he said. New fryers and grills arrive tomorrow. I've got the staff schedule requests and payroll's been processed. Everyone's getting paid tonight. Ethan nodded, a weight lifting slightly. Good. Keep me updated on the staff meetings. I want to know what they need to succeed. David hesitated, lowering his voice. There's something else. I checked the records. Some maintenance requests from this store were flagged as resolved at corporate, but the funds never made it here. Someone's been sitting on them. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Find out who. I want a full report by tomorrow. David nodded and moved off to oversee the closing tasks. Ethan took a moment to survey the store, The employees working together, the customers leaving with satisfied nods. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. He thought of his father, who'd built Harper's Grill on the belief that people mattered more than profits. Ethan had let that vision slip, but he wouldn't let it die. Not on his watchdog as he stepped outside into the cool evening air. The Harper's Grill logo glowing above the door, Ethan felt a surge of determination. The Eastwood store was turning a corner, but the complaints about Westfield meant his work was just beginning. He'd go undercover again, dig deeper, and root out whoever was undermining his company. This wasn't just about fixing one store. It was about reclaiming a legacy. This story of Ethan Harper is more than a tale of corporate reform. It's a testament to the power of empathy, accountability, and action. Ethan's decision to go undercover reflects a deep commitment to understanding the struggles of his employees. From Sarah's fight to provide for her daughter, to Jason and Emma's frustration with a broken system. His journey reminds us that leadership isn't about titles or reports. It's about listening, seeing the truth, and taking responsibility for change. The humanism shines through in Ethan's recognition of his team's resilience and his resolve to give them the respect they deserve. The lessons here are clear. Neglect breeds dysfunction, but courage can rebuild trust. Whether you're running a company or managing a small team, the story challenges us to ask, are we truly seeing the people we lead? Are we addressing the problems right in front of us? Ethan's story is a call to action to step into the fray, confront hard truths, and fight for what's right. If this story resonated with you, there's more where it came from. Subscribe to Legacy Stories on insert platform, for example, YouTube, podcast, or website, for more tales of courage, redemption, and human connection. Join us to discover narratives that inspire and challenge, and be part of a community that values stories with heart. Hit that subscribe button, and let's keep the legacy alive.